themselves so folks know who will be answering questions. So maybe we can start with Damon.
Yes, great. Thanks, Christy. Welcome everybody, and really excited to share this opportunity with you as the community. And my name is Damon Johnston, Manager Recreation Services, and I've had the pleasure to be a part of this project since this funding was provided and announced for the City of Nanaimo. So just welcome and look forward to today's session.
Great. And Lisa, you're there. There you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Brinkman. I'm Manager of Community Planning, and very pleased to see everyone here and very interested in this grant funding. That's fantastic. And hope we can answer your questions today.
Great. And Leanna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Leanna. I am the planning student working with community planning for the summer with the City of Nanaimo.
Great, thank you. And she's been kind of definitely the brains behind the scene helping us organize this. So thank you so much. So I'm just going to share my screen and just provide hopefully a quick overview, because I really do want to leave as much time at the end for questions. All the information that I'm going to go over is all available through our webpage, as well as our guidelines and criteria. So this, is more of an opportunity for you guys to ask some scenario questions. So let's see, share my screen here. Can you guys see my PowerPoint? Yeah, great, perfect. Yeah, great. So welcome to our Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy Grant application information session. We're really lucky to be receiving these funds from Public Safety Canada. And Public Safety Canada is providing this funding through the Building Safer Communities Fund. And the objective of this fund is to help municipalities and Indigenous communities prevent gun and gang violence by really addressing their root cause. So the City of Nanaimo, through this fund, has access to just over $1.1 million to fund programs under 6 focus areas that are found in our Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy. And this information, this strategy is available on our website. And it was a strategy that many of you took part and provided input in the first year of this project. So just a couple of important things to note. You can see up on our webpage all of the information that's required, but we do heavily recommend that you read the Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy, because it really provides the structure and the basis for the work that we're doing. The grant guidelines and criteria are also available up there, and that provides a little bit more detail. And then we also have some frequently asked questions for common questions asked about grants. So all of that is available up on our website for your viewing. So just wanted to touch quickly on the 6 key focus areas for this grant application program. These were discovered through our community engagement that we did last year to develop the strategy. And there's 6 key focus areas. The first one is safe youth gathering spaces. So looking to establish safe, free youth gathering spaces within existing facilities. And the city is currently working to identify 2 locations for these gathering spaces. And of course, these grant funds can be used to fund programs in these spaces. Youth outreach, definitely a need to expand some outreach and related programs, including, service hours that are accessible and locations that help provide access to youth at risk and to meet a wide range of their needs. The other focus area is connecting youth to land and water through Sinewa. So teaching, so really expanding and creating opportunities to connect youth to land and water. A youth mentoring program to connect youth with a whole host of different diverse role models and significant caring adults. Enhancing existing programs. So this is actually, and I talk a little bit later about this, but this focus area is really to improve existing programs by adding new components that fill gaps and build protective factors for children. And media and communications. This came up as an area that needed some work to help build relationship with media and develop key positive messaging to highlight youth programs and initiatives, and to really work against that repeated negative media attention. I won't go over these, but these are found in the Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy. And these are the risk factors that are significant for youth in Nanaimo. And the recommended focus areas listed that I just spoke about are intended to reduce these risk factors for youth and children. So the programs and the applications to really work to reduce these risk factors. This is application criteria in addition to the focus areas. The strategy lists further criteria to ensure that programs are low barrier, accessible, and equitable. The following criteria were developed to guide the funding distribution, and a program should meet most of the criteria listed here to be selected for funding. And again, this information is in the strategy, and it's also listed in detail in the grant and guidelines criteria. So some kind of frequently asked questions. Who can apply for this funding? So established nonprofit organizations, public sector entities can apply, or government bodies can apply for this funding. And we have had several questions of organizations that maybe provide programs and services, within Nanaimo or outside of Nanaimo. And so I think it's really important that organizations that are located outside of the city or Nanaimo First Nations reserve land can apply. However, the funds can only be used for programs that are being delivered within the boundaries of City of Nanaimo and Nanaimo First Nations. And that's based on our criteria with Public Safety Canada. Our application timeline. So we've opened our applications on July 10th. And of course, today we're doing the online information session. The applications will close on Monday, August 14th at 12 p.m. Please note that the programs must start during the fall or winter of 2023 and can be funded until March 2026. And I'll talk a little bit more about timeline a little bit later on. So applications received after this date may only be considered if there's unused funds. And so that will determine on how many applications we get. And late requests may be considered in some exceptional circumstances. And the process that the city follows, just like other grant applications, is that recommendations for fund distribution based on applications are forwarded to City Council with recommendations. And then so Council ultimately makes that decision, and that decision will happen at the end of September at one of the regular council meetings. And our plan is to provide access to those funds October 1st to successful applicants. So a little bit about the application process. This is all available online. So a complete application includes the application form and the grant application budgets. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the budgets because that sometimes can be confusing. This can be accessed online, or if you'd like a paper copy, you can definitely reach out to one of our city team and we'd be happy to provide that. Again, the completed application package must be completed by 12 p.m. on Monday, August the 14th. And you can submit this application either via email to socialplanning@nanaimo.ca or by mail, and the mailing address is listed on the application, or you're also able to drop off and physically drop off an application to our location here on Dunsmuir Street at the SARC building. So as part of the application process, we do have funding over 3 years that's distributed by Public Safety Canada. And so depending on the duration of your proposed program, you'll need to supply a budget for each fiscal year that you plan to provide the programming. And this is, as I mentioned, is to align with the distribution of the funds being provided to the city by Public Safety Canada. So you'll see year one, it's a shorter year from October 1st to 2023 to March 31st, 2024. So if you do intend on providing any kind of programming during that time, you'll have to make sure that you have a budget for that fiscal timeline. And then year two is a standard fiscal year from April 1st to March 31st of the following year, and so on for year three. So you don't have to, have programming throughout this whole 3 years, but it does have to be complete by March 31st, 2026. And we would need a budget for each year, depending on your program timeline. So the funding distribution is further guided by the steering committee. So we do have a Nanaimo Youth Resilience Steering Committee that has been leading the implementation and providing leadership for the Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy. And during the development of the strategy, when we were determining the focus areas, there was an exercise done based on experience and knowledge of delivering similar types of programs on, high impact and high effort. And so these are proposed percentages of the funds that would go to these particular focus areas. But these are estimates and will vary depending on the actual grant applications received. And again, this information is also it's available right in the grant application through the program budget templates, but a further breakdown of funds based on estimated percentage for each focus year will be added to the program budget. So just a reminder, so these are the different funding distributions that we get from Public Safety Canada. And then the previous slide, this one back here, I know it's a little bit confusing, breaks down the percentages of what the estimated funds would go to. So we're happy to answer questions about that because I think that part is a little bit confusing. But this information and a further breakdown is provided on your Excel budget template when you complete with your application. So eligible expenses, and these are predetermined by Public Safety Canada. So I won't go over all of that, but this is all outlined in the application. But so it covers things like salaries, wages and benefits, professional and consultant costs, and so on. Typical stuff that we typically would find. But we do have to make sure that we stick to these actual line items. They don't allow us to add any other expenses. So if you're not sure, if you have expenses and you're not sure what line item they should go to, please reach out to city staff and we'll help with that. Just some more eligible expenses. And again, this is all outlined in detail in the grant application. And I just wanted to highlight the ineligible expenses. And so these are funds that Public Safety Canada will not allow us to reimburse for programs. So any goods and services that are normally provided by the service agency. And I'm just going to clarify that because I did talk about a focus area being expanding in existing programs. So I talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to be really clear that they won't fund existing programs as they are. There has to be an enhancement or a new element that you're adding to the program. And that's just a requirement of this fund that Public Safety Canada is offering. We cannot use any of the funds to pay for regular or any type of ongoing police services. Any core or ongoing operating expenses that are already in operation, and then hospitality and that doesn't meet the eligible expense criteria. And that information is also located in the application as well. So a little bit about the grant application evaluation process. So applications will be received and reviewed by an evaluation committee, and the evaluation committee is comprised of our steering committee members, and these are steering committee members that won't be applying for this grant application. It will also include City of Nanaimo and Nanaimo staff. And what the evaluation committee will do will focus on the criteria that I've talked about, so the focus areas, the risk factors and the application criteria listed previously. But there is there is a weighted process that I'm going to go over a little bit for you on the next slide. But that's eventually how they'll evaluate the applications. And what they'll do, as mentioned, is they will make recommendations to be forwarded to City Council for consideration of approval. And successful applicants will receive written notice of Council's decision by the end of September 2023, as I mentioned. So the grant applications will be evaluated by the criteria that I mentioned, but it's also going to be weighted by the following questions. So the relevance: does the program reflect the focus area in the Nanaimo Resilience Strategy and work to address the identified risk factors, so the ones that I touched upon previously? Does the program incorporate most of the criteria identified to ensure that children and youth at risk can access that programming? Impact: what difference will the program make for the intended audience? efficiency and how well are the resources utilized. And sustainability, will the benefits for the programs last beyond the funding cycle? So these are the considerations that the evaluation committee will use when they're reviewing applications. And this is just another part of what I've mentioned before, that this funding cannot be used to fund existing programs, but it can be funded to add notable enhancements to existing programs that help to reduce risk factors. And so these are just some of the examples, and these are all listed in the application guide as well. So you may have an existing program that you're currently running, but would like to enhance it to be able to reduce risk factors for youth. And so that could be adding elements of sports and recreation. It could be, connecting urban Indigenous youth to culture or elders or the land. It could be introducing health and wellness programming, youth mentorship, any of those types of things, expanding access or possibly expanding age groups. And this is just a little note on reporting requirements. So all applicants who receive funds have to comply with the reporting timelines that are actually set out by Public Safety Canada. And this actually allows us as a city to make sure that we're accountable to the funder. And usually that reporting is done quarterly, and it'll include things like program activity summaries, quantitative and qualitative data on program indicators. It will include general ledger reporting, including the appropriate backup receipts, and any other information that we may request for Public Safety Canada. However, these details will be outlined in the service agreement for successful applicants. There you go. So that's I just wanted to provide a quick overview because I really wanted to leave it mostly open for questions. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. See if let me just open my screen here. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions, or if there's any things that came up in the presentation. It's pretty high level, but if you have examples or scenarios you'd like to present, our team is available to take those questions now. So I see we've got Kim asking a question.
Hi, Christy. Thanks a lot. A couple of points here. I ran through the application prior to coming online here, and found that if Section 2 project overview, the second question, is this a new program or existing one? And you can't click both. So if you are applying for a new program and you are applying for funding to say complement that in an existing program, do you submit two applications? That's first question.
Yeah, if you're applying for a new program and you're also applying for funds to enhance a program that you're already offering, that would require two separate grant applications.
Okay, and would they be weighed equally, or would there be preference given to one, or do you figure that out with the applicant and the?
Yeah, we would, we would, of course, would put every single grant application through our criteria that I've mentioned, as well as the weighting. And that's how it would be basically evaluated.
Second question, I didn't notice when you went through the funding distribution over the 3-year period, I didn't notice that anywhere in the package that was provided. Maybe it's there someplace, but I think that's really important to note, because you'll have half as much in your third year as you would in the first 2 years. Therefore, applicants should be warned that they need to develop their programming such that you've got half of the weight on your budget in the third year as you did have in the first two. And of course, year one, you're only 6 months.
Yeah, that's correct. We just added a table to the program budget template this morning, because we noted as we were preparing for this presentation that it was absent. So it is up on there now, and it does break down per focus area, the estimated percentage, and then what is available per year based on what Public Safety Canada is for year 1, 2, and 3. So that information is up on there now. So our apologies for missing that.
No worries. And I assume that the payment dates are going to be October 1 and then April 1 and April 1.
That's when the city gets access to the funds, that's when we would distribute, yes.
Right. So you just direct deposit that to an agency's account or whatever.
Well, normally what we do, and Lisa and Damon, feel free to jump in as our managers, but normally what we would do is we would develop a service agreement, and our payment schedule would be outlined in there. And typically, in the past, we just receive invoices from folks, and then we pay based on invoice. We wouldn't do a direct deposit of funds up front. And that's just because we have reporting requirements to Public Safety Canada, and that's typically how we're required to do it with them as well.
Okay, so you receive an invoice on October 1, April 1, and April 1, and then pay subsequent to that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, so usually it's for services provided. So I think it can vary depending, but typically we would get an invoice, say at the end of the month for the previous month, and we would pay that. And so forth, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. I'm just wondering if that may not jeopardize some programs in how if they don't have funds available, let's say.
Yeah, so what we have done in the past, depending on the organization, is we have provided some funds, a percentage of some funds up front just to get them started. We have done that with other organizations, and we would just discuss that as a per need basis, depending on the successful applicants. But we have done that in the past.
Okay, thanks. Don't want to hog the Q&A time, Sol.
Oh yeah, no problem. Okay, Chris, you're up next.
Hello, thanks for this session. I'm curious, it did outline that there is requirements for youth to be identified as high barrier, at risk. I can't remember all the terminology, but there were things. I'm wondering if the city is outlining how or if there's criteria to determine that, to quantify that, if there's any vetting process, or if that's what the city is asking agencies to bring forward.
Good, very good question. That is identified in the Youth Resilience Strategy. So if you look in there, it does talk about youth at risk. I do believe that if we remember that this funding is meant to work upstream to prevent youth from participating in gun and gang violence, basically, or crime. So we know social determinants of health kind of all fall along that spectrum. And so we don't actually have a specific definition from Public Safety Canada. The caveat being that we are targeting youth at risk. So if that makes sense, I know it's kind of like a broad answer, but I think it is a bit subjective in the work that we're doing. But as long as we can tie it to the identified risk factors that are found within the strategy, then it would be applicable.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really glad to hear that that's the approach the city is able to give. I know sometimes it's restricted by the funder. I know from Future's perspective, having that more subjective approach is actually an easier way of getting more youth involved, presenting less barriers. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
My second
sorry,
question,
just before you go on, Lisa, did you want to, I saw your mic come off. I don't know if you wanted to respond to Chris's first question.
No, I think that I was just going to add that you're the organizations that actually have that expertise. And so, yes, we are looking to you to help us identify those youth at risk as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful. So my second question is just around, I saw listed under the ineligible finances, including core and ongoing operating expenses. I'm just wondering if that also includes any small percentage going towards administration from this grant. So for example, up to 10%.
Yeah, I think if it's specific to the new program, then Public Safety Canada would consider that as an eligible expense. It still has to fall under the items that they actually list in that budget. We're basically using their template, their budget template for what's required for us to report. So that could be something that we could, have further discussion with the successful applicant, but it couldn't just be general administration for the organization, if that makes sense.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Hey, I see Zoe, you're next.
Thank you so much, Christy, and thanks so much for all this fantastic information. Just a few quick questions. I'm curious what, if the project touches on more than one focus area, what your preference is in terms of how we identify that.
Yeah, so in the application, you can click on more than one focus area. So that's even better. Like I said, that's, covering more than one focus area is wonderful.
Okay. And so just a little bit of context, if it's helpful. As you know, I work with Take a Hike Youth Mental Health Foundation. And what we are considering doing right now is a series of kind of professional development shared practices that really help to guide and ground our work that will be developed and then implemented inside classrooms directly with vulnerable youth. Now, this project has kind of started a little bit already. There's conversations, there's planning. So would that be, of course, there will be funding needed for further development and then implementation inside classrooms. Would that still be considered a new program if it's not part of our ongoing existing programs as it stands now?
I mean, it's my understanding, based on what you're telling me right now, it would be considered a new program because you're not actually up and running it right now.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Angelica. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, that would be good. Thanks, Christy. Just want to say thank you again, as everybody else. Definitely such a fantastic initiative. My question is more around finances. Is there a limit per each grant? I know there is a limit that you have to as a overall pot, but how many agencies, for example, you're considering in terms of the application? Is there a limit per agency? 30,000. 100,000, or one agency can apply for a overall budget? Just
Yeah.
curious on that perspective.
Very good question. I'll also lean on my team. I think that we didn't put a maximum, like we put the amounts in there dedicated towards each focus area. But like Zoe asked earlier, can we do more than one focus area? So because of that, we didn't want to put maximum budgets. And in our experience, and maybe Lisa and Damon can expand on this, but sometimes we get a lot of applications, sometimes we don't. So we don't want to limit, that. So that's why we put the amounts that we're actually getting. So service providers have an idea, right? And then we would be able to kind of evaluate that as applications come in. But Lisa and Damon, do you have anything else to add about that?
Maybe just to say that, Public Safety Canada is really wanting us to target youth at risk and develop programs to prevent gun and gang violence. So we will be looking at, the best compilation of applications that address this Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy and those pieces. So we were hoping to give some flexibility for that. So I hope that, yeah, that's okay.
I appreciate it. And I do actually have to say that newcomers are one of the really vulnerable youth in terms of being recruited for the gangs, as well the human trafficking, particularly with the girls. So absolutely appreciate that. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Good questions. I've got Adrian next.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm a board member with the Nanaimo Canoe Kayak Club. And we have some other board members on the call today. This is really helpful and so great that our Commodore made sure that we could participate in this info session. So my first question is just around partnerships with other community agencies. In your scoring criteria and your weighting, do you look at and provide scoring for applications that show collaboration and shared program delivery between agencies in the community?
Yeah, good question. I know I flipped over that slide very quickly, but under the application criteria, the one where we highlight that most programs should meet the criteria, community partnerships is listed under that application criteria.
Great, thanks, Christy. And my other question, sorry for the background noise, is just around support from the city. I mean, all of our, I would imagine a number of us, we already enjoy ongoing support from the city in a number of different ways, whether it be through our facilities or, our physical space that we operate out of. We operate at Loudon Park on Long Lake. And I'm just wondering what other contributions or support in terms of data, support for meeting space, when you think of those safe spaces that this grant is meant to foster. Is there anything that you can speak to around what kind of support you'd be able to offer successful applicants in delivering programs for vulnerable youth?
Good question. I'm wondering if this question might be best suited to Lisa and Damon.
I'll just start in that. So one of the, the biggest impacts that was identified is to have a safe youth gathering space, and out of those spaces to operate programs ideally. So the city is looking to contribute hopefully to safe youth gathering spaces, and kind of located in the city's we're a long city, so that there's accessible from the north and the south, ideally. So we are looking for programs that could operate out of those spaces. That we don't have that information yet. But any other kinds of resources from the city, maybe I'll leave that with Damon to respond to.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the question, Adrian. And I think, as a department, I think we can bring, many things. I think, knowledge and resources around, programming. I think, our programming team has a lot of knowledge around what the needs are in the community around supporting youth. And so I think, we could bring some of that knowledge and knowledge sharing as a resource to applicants for sure. Yeah, so those are just a couple of really brief things I would say that I think the city can do to help support. I think things like possible, marketing opportunities, right, to get the word out there. I think that could be really valuable, and that's something that we have a lot of experience in. And as Lisa touched on, I think access to facilities potentially as well as part of this could be, sort of 4 kind of key resources that I think we could bring to the table to support some of this work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, Damon, you mentioned 4. Could you just recap those for me? I'm just busy jotting down. So I heard access to facilities, knowledge reprogramming.
Yeah, marketing. And the 4th one, I think I blended the first 2, I think. But yeah. So let's say it's sort of those 3 key resources. Oh, the other one was really focusing around understanding the needs through our community development and partnerships that we have with so many community organizations. And I think just that knowledge of what organizations are doing already in the community. I mean, because we're so connected, I think in that way, which could be valuable in terms of, avoiding duplication of programming and that kind of thing.
Terrific. Thanks to your team for that, Therese.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Bonnie, you're up next.
Hi. First of all, I just have to apologize for the construction noise in the background. So I am an arts, primarily a theater teacher. I've run Kismet Theater Academy from 2012 to 2020 in downtown Nanaimo, where I had a real focus on at-risk youth. My focus is on queer, trans, disabled, neurodivergent, and racialized youth. And I had to shut down in 2020, but I'm reopening in 2023 in September, both with a school and with a nonprofit, which is meant to uplift the voices of marginalized communities, which I feel works into this area really well. But I didn't see any information in your literature about arts specifically. So I was sent this link yesterday from Adrian Breen, your cultural manager. And I'm just wondering, in terms of I'm planning my programming to start in September. I would love to offer free programming to at-risk youth, but with the not knowing whether you're getting it till the end of September, I'm just wondering how that works in terms of scheduling, because it does take a while to actually reach that demographic, to let them know that you're offering this programming, and then to get them in to the program, you know. So I'm just wondering, like, if you don't know until the end of September, if it's okay if then you don't start your program until January, sort of thing, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, definitely. We understand that with any kind of new programming, there's developmental time that needs to happen with development programming, you know, recruiting, all of that kind of stuff. And there wouldn't be an expectation for you to have that all done before, especially if you're not sure if you're going to get the funding. So yeah, our stipulation, because of you just have to understand that because of the way they rolled out the funds, this fiscal year's much shorter. So we have more funds to spend in this first year in a short amount of time, right? And so sometimes I know we say, you know, just give us the money, we'll spend it. But sometimes that can be a challenge within, you know, 4 or 5 months, you know, but, you know, that could be applied to startup costs and time and stuff like that. So that could be fine. As long as the program starts, you know, in early winter or late winter. And that's what we've said in the application.
Okay.
Yeah.
And arts are where we're
absolutely. Arts, culture, it is listed in some of the in the guidelines and criteria and brackets of different types, but recreation, culture, arts, yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, super, thank you.
Great. Is there any other questions? Comments, questions? Great. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Thanks, Christy. One other question is just around, and I haven't had a chance to go through all the really comprehensive information on the website, but just wondering, is this the first funding cycle, or do we have case studies of previous successful projects under this funding strategy?
Yeah, really good question. So this is the first time we're rolling it out and receiving the funds from Public Safety Canada. I think there's 2 things I'd like to answer in your question. One that maybe you didn't really ask, but I think is important, but I'll leave to the end. But the second thing is if you're looking for other similar types of programs that are operating in different communities that kind of fall under this Building Safer Communities Fund, there is an inventory on Public Safety Canada's website. And they actually have an inventory of successful evidence-based programming that they're offering youth at risk that actually has proven some value in reducing risk for gun and gang violence. So I definitely would recommend you go to the inventory on that list. And I wonder too, maybe even Leanna, since we have everybody's contact, we can actually just send them the link and we can follow up with that afterwards for everybody. There's another one in the US that's also called crimesolutions.org that also has a similar type of inventory. So they list a lot of youth mentoring programs, different things like that, and then a link to their actual program. So we can send that information out. But the other thing that your question triggered for me is just making sure that folks know that it's only one grant application that we need over the 3 years. Okay, of course, we have 3 different program budgets, but it's only one. We're not going to make you do this every year. But I do want to just say that, you know, there is reporting requirements that are required by us in order to access next year's funds. So we will require that information and that reporting from you before you're able to access funds moving forward. So I just want to put that out there just to clarify that.
Maybe just to add, so our hope is that we get really great applications over the next 4 weeks, that we're able to distribute the funds for the next 3 years. The first year being very short, and the two years following being, you know, so our hope is to be able to distribute the funds to successful programs with contracts that are for that 2.5 years. However, we'll see what we get. You know, if we may need to do another call out depending on how the programs evolve, or, you know, our goal is to make sure this money is distributed in Nanaimo over the next 3 years. And so we hope to only just do this one round, but I guess we'll see.
Good point. Yes. Angelica,
And
go
just-
ahead. Oh,
Could I just add a follow-up question to that, if I may? Just Christy, you touched on the evidence-based nature of some of the successful projects on Public Safety Canada. So that would be another question is, and again, I'm sorry, I haven't read through all the material yet, but just in terms of outcome measures that we're expected to report out on, like, do we have a model that you're able to share in the package in terms of what kind of measures you're wanting community organizations to be tracking? Because, you know, there's just like flat participation numbers, which is just very, you know, quantitative and cut and dry. You know, and I can think all the other agencies on this call can speak to like how rich the experience can be for our participants. So that qualitative analysis, or taking a narrative approach to being able to empower youth to share a story. So just wondering if you can speak to that evidence-based that model that you'd like to see or need to see us hitting.
Yeah, so we don't have a template established yet, because I think each program will have different program indicators and measurements that we'll be looking for. The resilience strategy outlists the protective factors and risk factors that we're looking for. And so that could be a really good guide if you're doing a program logic model or anything like that for your program, to be able to measure outcomes and inputs and outputs and all of that. That would be a really good one to review. But of course, it's going to be specific on what program you're writing your proposal for. So we don't have that set out yet, but we do have guides. Like, that's what the strategy is there for us to really make sure that we're focused on those goals and reducing those risk factors. So that would be a start. And we will work that out with the service agreement once we identify those successful applicants.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
And Christy, my question is very similar, but it was more specific to reporting exactly, you know, in terms of, is there a template developed? What is it specifically that you would be looking at in terms of the statistics? Very similar to Adrian. Is the city planning to develop a reporting template, or is it really going to be just more narrative at this stage? What's the indication so far?
No, we haven't had like some real in-depth discussion, but one of the requirements for Public Safety Canada is that we are measuring our outcomes. So we will want to develop that with each program or service agency that's successful in receiving this funding, because we'll be required to report that. We do have some templates, especially around general ledger and stuff, that's quite specific, and we can share that with folks, you know, whoever's successful, because we would have to actually fill those out. But Public Safety Canada does have like reporting forms that we have to fill out as we compile information. And that could be used as a guide depending on, you know, the programs. And then we would narrow it down, right down to specific indicators that we would want to measure. But we would build that with you for sure. We'd be able to provide that support.
And just a little bit on that. So Christy mentioned it will be quarterly. Is there expectations also the annual? And what about the forecasting per year? So that's the next question. Are you requesting forecasting as well on quarterly basis, or are you looking at, you know, just forecasting once a year? What's the indication in there?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about with forecasting. I don't believe that's a requirement on our end, but I'll have to get back to you on that one. I have filled out some reporting for Public Safety Canada for the first year. And it was just like general ledger with sometimes with some backup information required. And then of course the quantitative and qualitative, so opportunities to share stories, but then also sharing quantitative data as well. So I can get back to you on the forecasting piece. We do have a financial analyst that works with us in the city that's helping us with that project. So that could be a question I will follow up with you on.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Or I don't know if Lisa and Damon, if you guys have anything you might want to add, or if there's any other questions. We're also available afterwards as well. But
just do feel free to call us and ask. We want to distribute these funds. We want to use the funds in the city of Nanaimo. So we want to help you be successful in meeting the Public Safety Canada criteria. And so do feel free to reach out to us with that questions you have.
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any of the questions or hands up, so I think we'll close. And like Lisa said, please reach out if something does come up for you afterwards. Great. Well, thank you so much. Hajka, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.